Hello everyone, Wale Akieme is my name. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are diving into Genesis chapter 4, the gripping tale of Cain and Abel. So if you are interested in learning about lessons on jealousy, anger and consequences, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our enlightening video. So let's get started. In Genesis chapter 4, we encounter the gripping story of Cain and Abel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve. This chapter delves into the complexities of human emotion, exploring the theme of sibling rivalry, jealousy, and the consequences of our actions. The tale of Cain and Abel serves as a timeless lesson about the importance of offering our best with a sincere heart and the dangers of allowing negative emotion to overpower us. As the story unfolds, we learn that both Cain and Abel bring offerings to God. Abel's offering comes from a sincere and devoted heart, leading God to look upon it favorably. However, Cain's offering does not receive the same favor from God, possibly because it lacks the same level of sincerity. In the face of rejection, jealousy and anger consume Cain's heart. Instead of introspecting and trying to improve his offering, he allows this negative emotion to take over. In a moment of intense rage, Cain commits a tragic act by killing his own brother Abel, leading to profound consequences for both himself and his family. God confronts Cain about the murder and warns him about the danger of sin. As a consequence of his actions, Cain is banished from the land and become a wanderer. However, even amidst the severity of his punishment, God shows mercy by putting a mark on Cain to protect him from harm. The story of Cain and Abel is a powerful tale of jealousy, anger, and its consequences. It highlights the importance of making heartfelt offerings and danger of succumbing to negative emotions. Ultimately, it also illustrates God's mercy even in the face of human mistakes and sins. So this lesson provides essential insight into the complexity of human emotions, the importance of sincere offerings, and the opportunity for redemption and forgiveness through God's grace. If you enjoy this video, give it a thumb up and share with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and life-changing stories. So let's now go through Genesis chapter 4 and highlight its lessons and teachings verse by verse. In verse 1, the verse tells us about the birth of Cain, the first child of Adam and Eve, and it shows the importance of family and the role of God in bringing new life into the world. In verse 2, here we learn about Cain's younger brother Abel and their different occupations. It shows us that people can have diverse interests and skills, and it's okay to be different from one another. In verse 3, Cain presented an offering to God from his crops, which showed the importance of giving back to God and acknowledging his role in providing for us. In verse 4, Abel's offering pleased God because it showed his devotion and willingness to give his best to God. It teaches us that God values sincerity and a heartfelt offering. In verse 5, this verse shows that Cain's offering wasn't accepted by God because it lacked the right attitude. It teaches us that our actions must come from a place of love and respect for God. In verse 6, God questioned Cain's emotions, indicating that he cares about our feelings and wants us to reflect on actions and attitude. In verse 7, God advises Cain that doing the right thing will lead to acceptance, but sin is always nearby, tempting us. It teaches us to be mindful of our choices and to resist the temptations that can lead us astray. Verse 8, this tragic event shows the destructive power of envy and anger. It teaches us the grave consequences of allowing negative emotions to control our actions. In verse 9, when God confronted Cain about Abel's whereabouts, Cain trying to hide the truth. So this teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our actions and be honest with God and others. In verse 10, God holds us accountable for our actions, and even when we try to hide the truth, He knows everything. It shows us that we cannot escape the consequences of our choices. In verse 11, Cain faced the consequences of his actions with a curse on the ground he walked. This teaches us that our choices can affect not just ourselves, but also the world around us. In the next part, the Cain's punishment was to wander the earth as a fugitive. It reminds us that our actions have far-reaching consequences and can impact our future. Verse 13, Cain realized the weight of his actions and the severity of his punishment. It teaches us to consider the consequences of our choices before making decisions. Verse 14, Cain expressed his fear of facing revenge from others due to his action. It teaches us that our wrong choices can lead to fear and insecurity. In verse 15, God showed mercy even to Cain, protecting him from immediate harm. It teaches us about God's compassion and the importance of forgiveness. Verse 16, Cain's exile from God's presence emphasizes the significance of staying connected with God and living in harmony with His will. Verse 17, despite his mistakes, Cain continued his life and started a family. It shows that life goes on and we have the opportunity to learn from our past and build something new. Verse 18, this genealogy reminds us of the continuity of life and the importance of family connections. Verse 19, this verse introduces polygamy, showing us the complexity and challenges that can arise in family dynamics. Verse 20, Jebal's skills as a nomadic herdsman highlights the diversity of human occupations and how different talent contributes to society. Verse 21, Jubal's musical talent demonstrates the beauty of creativity and the various forms of expression we have as human beings. Verse 22, Cain's craftsmanship showcases the ingenuity and progress of human civilization. Verse 23, Lamech's boastful and violent attitude reflects the consequences of a fallen and sinful world where pride and aggression can lead to harm. Verse 24, Lamech's statement emphasizes the escalating nature of vengeance and the importance of breaking the cycle of violence. Verse 25, Seth's birth brought hope and new beginning after the tragedy of Abel's death. It reminds us of God's faithfulness in providing second chances. Verse 26, the mention of Enosh marks the beginning of people worshiping God, indicating the importance of seeking God's presence and guidance in our lives. In conclusion, Genesis chapter 4 provides valuable lessons about family, sincerity in worship, the consequences of negative emotions, responsibility for our actions, God's mercy, the complexity of human relationships, and the importance of seeking God's presence in our lives. It shows us the joys and challenges of living in a fallen world and the hope of finding redemption and new beginning through God's grace. If you're enjoying this video, give it a thumb up and share with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanations and life-changing stories. Thanks for watching. You can comment below. You can click the link below for a full access to our courses. Thanks and God bless you. Hello everyone, Wale Akinyemi here. Welcome back to our channel. So today we are diving into Genesis chapter 5. It's an exciting chapter filled with the genealogy from Adam to Noah. So if you are curious about your ancestral root and the continuity of God's plans, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our enlightening videos. So let's get started. In Genesis chapter 5, we embark on a fascinating journey through generations, tracing the lineage from Adam to Noah. So this genealogy provides a unique glimpse into the rich history of humanity, connecting us to our ancestral roots. So as we explore the names and ages of these early ancestors, we find valuable lessons about the continuity of God's plans, the significance of family heritage, and the faithfulness of God to his promises. From the first man Adam to the righteous Noah, each name in this chapter represents a vital link in the chain of human history. As we read about their long lifespan, it's essential to understand that this early generation lived in a different era from our own, where lifespan were notably longer than they are today. So through the passage of time, we witness the passing of the baton from one generation to the next, signifying the continuity of knowledge, wisdom, and family heritage. As each name is mentioned, we can't help but feel a connection to our own family trees, realizing that we too are part of a vast and intricate tapestry of human history. In this chapter, we learn about Noah, who stands out as a righteous man in the eyes of God. This introduction paves the way for the momentous event to come, the story of the great flood, a tale of judgment and redemption that will shape the course of humanity. As we delve into Genesis chapter 5, let us embrace our ancestral roots, appreciating the lessons and wisdom passed down through generations. So this chapter reminds us of the significance of family heritage, the continuity of God's plans, and the importance of seeking God's favor through righteous living. So if you find this video insightful, give it a thumb up and share it with your friends, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and captivating historical explorations. So let's go through the chapter, that's Genesis chapter 5, and explore its lessons and teaching verse by verse. In verse 1, this verse reminds us that all human beings are created in God's image, emphasizing the inherent value and dignity of every person. Verse 2, God created both men and women and blessed them. It teaches us about the equality and importance of both genders in God's plan. Verse 3, Seth, Adam's son, was born in Adam's likeness, highlighting the continuation of human generations and the significance of family relationships. Verse 4, this verse shows us the long lifespan of people in early generations and the importance of family and community bonds. Verse 5, despite Adam's long life, death is a natural part of the human experience, reminding us of the temporary nature of our earthly existence. Verse 6, Seth had a son named Enosh, indicating the continuation of generations and the passing on of life to the next family member. Verse 7, Seth, like his father Adam, had a long life and had multiple children, underscoring the importance of family and the propagation of human life. Verse 8, Seth's life eventually came to an end, reinforcing the cyclical nature of life and death in human history. Verse 9, Enosh became a father to Canaan, continuing the line of descent and the establishment of family ties. Verse 10, Enosh, like his ancestors, had a long life and a family, showcasing the ongoing pattern of life's continuation. Verse 11, Enosh's life came to an end, reinforcing the inevitability of mortality for all human beings. Verse 12, Canaan became a father to Mahalalel, indicating the generational passing of responsibilities and the growth of human society. Verse 13, Canaan, like his ancestors, had a long life and had a family, reflecting the continuation of human history through generation. Verse 14, Canaan's life too had an end point, emphasizing the finite nature of human existence. Verse 15, Mahalalel became a father of Jared, showing the ongoing legacy of family and the importance of lineage. Verse 16, Mahalalel, like his ancestors, lived a long life and had a family, continuing the pattern of human growth and relationship. Verse 17, Mahalalel's life eventually came to an end, emphasizing the transitory nature of human life. Then verse 18, Jared became a father of Enoch, underscoring the importance of family and the succession of generations. Verse 19, Jared, like his forefathers, lived a long life and had a family, showcasing the continuity of human existence. Verse 20, Jared's life, like others before him, came to an end, reminding us of the inevitability of mortality. Verse 21, Enoch became a father to Methuselah, continuing the generational line and the significance of familiar connections. Verse 22, Enoch's life took a notable turn as he walked with God, indicating his close and righteous relationship with the divine. Verse 23, Enoch's life was relatively shorter compared to his ancestors because his relationship with God stood out as a significant aspect of his existence. Verse 24, Enoch's unique relationship with God led to a special fate. He did not experience physical death, but God took him directly into his presence. Wow. Verse 25, Methuselah had a son named Lamech, furthering the family line and human legacy. Verse 26, Methuselah, like his ancestor, lived a long life and had a family, demonstrating the continuation of human generations. Verse 27, Methuselah's life spans nearly a millennium, but even he eventually faced mortality. Verse 28, Lamech had a son, adding to the chain of human descent and relationship. Verse 29, Lamech named his son Noah, expressing hope and expectations that Noah will bring relief from the difficulties and struggles of life. Verse 30, Lamech, like his ancestor, lived a long life and had a family, carrying on the legacy of human history. Verse 31, Lamech's life too eventually came to an end, reiterating the transcendent nature of human existence. Verse 32, Noah became a father to 3 sons, marking a crucial moment in the narrative and the continuation of the human race. Verse 33, Noah's life spanned nearly a millennium, but like his forefather, he faced mortality. In conclusion, Genesis chapter 5 emphasizes the value of human life, the significance of family and lineage, the cyclical nature of generations, and the reality of mortality. It also highlights examples of people who walked with God, demonstrating the importance of having a close and righteous relationship with the divine. The chapter shows the continuity of human history and the hope for relief and redemption from life's struggle. Ultimately, it reminds us of the fleeting nature of our earthly existence and the importance of seeking meaning and purpose in our lives. If you find this video insightful, give it a thumb up and share with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and captivating historical explorations. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. There's a link. You can click on the link to have access to our full biblical explanations. Thanks and God bless you. Today we are diving into Genesis chapter 6. Is an epic chapter filled with the story of the great flood. If you are excited about exploring lessons in righteousness and redemption, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our enlightening videos. Let's get started. In Genesis chapter 6, we encounter the epic tale of the great flood, a story of judgment and redemption. As humanity becomes engulfed in wickedness and corruption, God looks upon the earth and decided to take action. Amidst this backdrop, we meet Noah, a righteous man who finds favor in God's eyes. God chooses Noah to be the instrument of redemption. Amidst the impending judgment, He instructs Noah to build an ark, a massive vessel that would save him, his family, and a pair of every kind of animal from the flood. Noah faithfully followed God's instructions and together with his family begins the constructions of the ark. an extraordinary feat of obedience and trust. As the ark near completion, the flood waters start to cover the earth, bringing judgment upon the wickedness of humanity. But even amidst the devastation, we witness God's mercy. After the flood receded, Noah sent out a dove which returns with an olive branch, a symbol of hope and God's mercy amidst the judgment. God establishes a covenant with Noah, promising to never again destroy the earth with a flood. The rainbow becomes the signs of this covenant, a beautiful reminder of God's faithfulness to his promises. The chapter of the great floods offers us profound lessons about righteousness, obedience, and God's unending mercy. It reminds us of the consequences of wickedness and the importance of seeking God's favor through righteous living. Noah's faithfulness in building the ark teaches us about the value of obedience, even in challenging times. Moreover, this chapter showcases God's mercies amidst judgment, offering hope and redemption to those who will seek Him. If you find this video insightful, give it a thumb up and share with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and captivating stories. Thanks for watching. Let's now explore Genesis chapter 6, verse by verse, its lessons and the teachings. In verse 1, this verse introduces the growing population of human beings and the importance of family and community ties. In verse 2, this verse describes the intermingling of different groups of people, which can teach us about the consequences of different cultural interactions. In verse 3, God sets a limit on human lifespan, emphasizing the temporary nature of lives on earth and the need to make the most of our time. In verse 4, this verse mentions of the Nephilims, whose identity is debated. It teaches us to stay focused on the main theme of the narrative and not get too caught up in minor details. In verse 5, this verse speaks of the widespread of corruptions and evil in humanity, reminding us of the importance of moral values and making righteous choices. In verse 6, God's grief over humanity's wickedness shows us the depth of His love and desire for us to live in accordance with His will. In verse 7, God's decision to bring judgment on the earth serves as a warning about the consequences of sin and the importance of repentance. In verse 8, Noah's righteousness and faithfulness show us that even in a corrupt world, individual can choose to follow God and find favor in His sight. Verse 9, Noah's righteousness and close relationship with God serves as an example for us to live lives that please God. In verse 10, the mention of Noah's son set the stage for the continuation of humanity through his family. In verse 11, the prevalence of corruption and violence in the world show us the consequences of turning away from God's will. In verse 12, the repetition of the earth's corruption emphasizes the severity of humans' rebellions against God. In verse 13, God's decision to bring a flood as a judgment shows us the seriousness of sin and the need for repentance. In verse 14, God instructs Noah to build an ark, showing us the importance of obedience and faith in following God's instruction. In verse 15, the specific measurement of the ark emphasizes God's attention to details and His plans for Noah's safety. In verse 16, God's instructions for the ark's design show us His care for practical details and His desire for thorough preparation. In verse 17, this verse underscores the severity of God's judgment and the need to take sin seriously. In verse 18, God's promise to establish a covenant with Noah and his family revealed His grace and mercy amidst judgment. In verse 19, God's command to bring two of every living thing show us His concern for the preservation of life and His provision for Noah's survival. In verse 20, This verse reiterates God's plan for preserving various species during the flood, reminding us of his care for all of creation. In verse 21, God's instruction to store food in the ark shows us his practical concern for the well-being of Noah and the animals. In verse 22, Noah's obedience to God's command set an example for us to follow God faithfully and completely. In conclusion, Genesis chapter 6 presents important lessons about the consequences of sin, God's love and mercy amid judgment, the significance of righteousness and obedience, and God's care for his creation. It also emphasizes the importance of family, community, and following God's instruction with faith and trust. The chapter sets the stage for the coming flood and the preservation of life through Noah's Ark, reminding us of God's ultimate plan for redemption and restoration. If you find this video insightful, give it a thumb up and share with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanations and captivating stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless you. Today we are diving into Mathew chapter 2, a fascinating chapter filled with the journey of the Magi in search of the newborn king of the Jews. If you are curious about the lesson on faith, humility, and encountering the King of Kings, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our enlightening videos. So let's get started. In Matthew chapter 2, we embark on a remarkable journey with the Magi, also known as the wise men, who follow a shining star in search of the newborn king of the Jews. This chapter unfolds with intrigue, danger, and divine guidance, leading us to profound lessons about faith, humility, and the overwhelming significance of encountering the King of Kings. The story begins with the arrival of the Magi in Jerusalem, asking about the one born as the king of the Jews because they saw a star in the east. King Herod and the religious leaders were troubled by this news, and they sought to find the exact location of the newborn king. As the Magi continue their quest, the star leads them to Bethlehem, where they found the baby Jesus, born in a humble manger. Filled with joy and reverence, they offer precious gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, signifying the recognition of Jesus as not just an earthly king, but a divine and spiritual ruler. In a dream, the Magi receive divine guidance to return home by a different route, avoiding King Herod's evil intentions. This divine intervention illustrates the importance of listening to God's guidance and be willing to change our path for his purposes. Through the journey of the Magi, we learn valuable lessons about faith and humility. Despite their status and knowledge, the Magi humbly seek the King of Kings, bowing before him with reverence and devotion. Their willingness to follow the star, even in uncertainty, exemplifies their unwavering faith in God's signs and guidance. Matthew chapter 2 also revealed the contrasting responses to the newborn king. While the Magi worship and offer gift, King Herod reacted with fear and hostility, seeking to eliminate the perceived threat to his power. This contrast reminds us that encountering Jesus brings about a choice to submit in faith or resist in fear. In this chapter, we find inspiration to seek and worship the King of Kings with humble hearts, to trust in God's guidance, and to recognize that encountering Jesus will inevitably impact our lives and call us to make choices. If you find this video insightful, give it a thumbs up and share with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and life-changing series. Thanks for watching. Let's go through Matthew chapter 2 and explore its lessons and teaching verse by verse. Verse 1. This verse introduces the story of Jesus' birth and the visit of the wise men, highlighting the significance of Jesus' arrival and the diverse people who came to worship him. Verse 2. The wise men recognized Jesus as the King of the Jews, demonstrating the importance of seeking and worshiping Jesus as the promised Messiah. In verse 3, Herod's troubled reaction shows that the arrival of the true king posed a threat to earthly powers and revealed the tension between human authority and God's divine plan. In verse 4, Herod's inquiry about the location of the Christ birth highlights the expectation and prophecy about the Messiah in the scriptures. In verse 5, the religious leader referred to the prophecy from the Old Testament, that's Micah 5 verse 2, that the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, showing the fulfillment of God's plan in Jesus' birth. In verse 6, the prophecies foretold that the Messiah, the ruler, will come from Bethlehem and will be a shepherd to God's people, emphasizing Jesus' role as the caring and guiding leader. In verse 7, Herod's secret meeting with the wise men indicates his deceptive intention to learn about Jesus' birth for his own purposes. In verse 8, Herod pretended to want to worship Jesus, but his real motive was to eliminate any potential threat to his own power, revealing the danger of selfish and deceitful intentions. In verse 9, the star guided the wise men to Jesus, demonstrating God's divine guidance and provision for those who seek him with a sincere heart. In verse 10, the wise men's joyfully reactions to finding Jesus emphasizes the incomparable joy that comes from encountering the Savior and the fulfillment of God's promises. In verse 11, the wise men worship and gift given symbolize the reverence and honor due to Jesus as the King, and it shows the art of giving to God from the heart. In verse 12, God's warning in a dream protected Jesus from Herod's evil plans and demonstrates God's care and guidance in our lives. In verse 13, God's angelic guidance led Joseph to protect Jesus by fleeing to Egypt, showing the father's protection and care for his son. In verse 14, Joseph's immediate obedience to the angel's instruction demonstrates the importance of trusting and obeying God's guidance in difficult times. In verse 15, Jesus' time in Egypt fulfilled the prophecies from Hosea chapter 11 verse 1, illustrating that God's plan and purposes are fulfilled according to his timing and word. In verse 16, Herod's cruel heart of killing innocent children reflects the depth of human wickedness and the desperate lengths some may go to hold on to power. In verse 17, the massacre of the children in Bethlehem fulfilled the prophecy from Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 15, underscoring the reality of sovereignty and the need for God's comfort and redemption. In verse 18, the prophet's words about Rachel's lamentation capture the grief and sorrow experienced by families who lost their children, reminding us of the brokenness in the world and the need for God's healings and consolation. In verse 19, God's angelic guardian continued, showing Joseph that it was safe to return to Israel after Herod's death. In verse 20, God's protection ensured the safety of Jesus and his family, demonstrating the faithfulness of God's promises. In verse 20, Joseph's obedience to the angel's instruction shows the significance of trusting and acting upon God's guidance. In verse 22, Joseph's fear led to another angelic warning, guiding him to the safer region of Galilee, demonstrating God's continued care and protection. In verse 23, Jesus' upbringing in Nazareth fulfilled the prophetic expectation, showing God's sovereignty in directing events to fulfill his purposes. In conclusion, Mathew chapter 2 reveals the significance of Jesus' birth and the fulfillment of prophecies about the Messiah. It teaches us about the reactions of different people to Jesus' arrival, including the wise men's worship and Herod's wicked intention. The chapter demonstrates God's divine guidance and protections shown through the angelic messages to Joseph and the fulfillment of prophecies related to Jesus' birth and early life. It reminds us of the importance of seeking and worshiping Jesus as the promised Savior and King, and the need to trust and obey God's guidance in our lives. If you find this video insightful, give it a thumbs up and share with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful biblical explanation and life-changing story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless you.